I'm glad you said that because especially now that people talk about work-life balance or is it life-work balance, but is there really balance? It's more boundaries and setting your sights on what's important to you. Yes, it's a wheel. It's that graph circumflex that you decide what's important to you, slices of your life pie, and then grade them. How am I doing? Where do I want to be? What am I going to do to close that gap?
Imagine it's 12 months from now, and you've achieved your major life goals. How does it feel to be in the best shape of your life? To wake up energized, excited about the day? To have great relationships and friends who support you and propel you forward? How does it feel to have an excess of money, to be able to make the choices you want? To be fearless and open to trying new adventures? Imagine being connected to the universe and it providing everything you desire. It's possible over time, and your past does not dictate your future. The only thing holding you back from this vision is you. It's time to take control of our thoughts and use them to our advantage. Welcome to Richer Soul, where we achieve our dreams and bring balance to health, wealth, relationships, time, and spirituality. If you have not had a chance to listen to episodes 1 through 9, I encourage you to go back and listen to the framework behind Richer Soul and how to create the life of your dreams. You can also find all the show notes for this episode at richersoul.com. Hey, it's Rocky. Welcome to Richer Soul. Today's guest is Mark Panceira, who will share how to create the right mindsets and a plan to create your ultimate life. I don't know who this quote comes from, but it is, an intelligent person learns from their own mistakes, but a genius learns from the mistakes of others. As for me, I want to learn from other people's mistakes. That's why I bring on so many amazing guests to learn how they've done it, the mistakes they've made. It's the reason I read so many books every month, to learn how have other people made mistakes so that I don't have to make them. It's much, much easier that way. A lot less painful. So last week we went a bit to the woo-woo side. Today we're going to go to the opposite end and show you how the science comes together to achieve those same types of results. How do we create the right mindsets? How are we going to make sure that we're aware of ours and how it affects us? You already heard one person from the Pacific Institute on. He was on a previous episode, Don Schminke, a few weeks back. And now we're going to dig deeper and actually bring you another expert in this area. So Mark is an accomplished business owner, community leader, executive, and entrepreneur. He is the CEO of the Pacific Institute, and he is all about driving human performance in organizations, teams, and individuals. He has worked with a ton of people. He's got a TEDx talk. He's been on all the big media. Let's meet Mark and learn from him. Welcome to Richer Soul, Mark Panceira. It's great to have you join us today.
Thank you, Rocky. Thanks for having me.
And I am excited to learn from you today. We always like to start at the beginning. What was it like when you were growing up, and how much did your family and school teach you about money?
Oh my gosh. What was it like when I was growing up? Well, it was a loving household, 2 intact parents, nuclear family, 2 sisters. So all good there. But I must say about learning about money, that's an interesting question, because I do have a recollection about that I'm not too fond of. I remember exactly where I was. I was with my father, sitting in his big black Cadillac, God bless him, God rest his soul. And we were at a stoplight. And it was an interesting exchange, because I remember he was pretty high pitched about it. You know, he was pretty forward about it. And he took out of his pocket a wad of cash. and he said, "This is what it's all about, Mark. This is it. This is power. You know what walks? Oh, no, what is it? BS walks and money talks, right? I think that's the adage. I've sort of blocked it out of my mind, but okay, Dad, got it. And there it is. I got it. That was a hard and fast lesson. Now, over time, I've realized that money is just a means to an end. But it certainly isn't, as my father shared. But he was a depression baby. He came out of a challenging time in a large family, and he was very, very successful in his own right. But that's how I learned about the importance of money. Oh my gosh, emblazoned on my soul.
And it's funny because we're going to be talking a lot about mindset today. And part of the reason we asked this question is to talk about people's money mindsets.
Yeah.
And how these are created and driven. And for a lot of people, just like you, these are just a random event in childhood.
Yeah.
And depending on how you accept it, internalize it, it can help you or it can hurt you in your adult life. And then there's the question of how do we reprogram it? But we'll get to that much later.
My friend, you are so right on. And my mind goes to one of my most favorite books, and that's Think and Grow Rich. And so many consider that, those that don't know might consider it that it's all about that, getting rich. Napoleon Hill, a 20-year research study commissioned by Andrew Carnegie, and asked to go around the country and interview the most successful people, asking them what made them successful. And so he interviews presidents of the United States and Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, and he came up with the famous saying, "What the mind of man can conceive and believe, he can achieve." And that is what you just mentioned, mindset. And that was 100 years ago, close to 100 years ago now. So, going back to the money question, what is your money mindset? Because if you're so locked on it as the gold standard, literally and figuratively, and that's where the power emanates from, money talks and you know what walks, right? That could be a limiting factor for you to attract money. And I just want to share that with you because based on what you just expressed, I thought of Think and Grow Rich. It's not about the title at all. It's all about mindset. And what is your mindset about attracting wealth, but in a fulfilling way? Back to you.
Have you read his other book, Outwitting the Devil?
No, but I've heard of it. Tell me about it. Is it even better?
It's a very different take. He said, the devil wins when the people are in the drift. Meaning people are no longer actively engaged in life, in choices. They're just following what they are told to do. And he goes through example. It's basically a conversation with him and the devil, imagined or whatever. But he talks about how school puts you in the drift, how church puts you in the drift, how your job puts you in, like how all of these things in society are literally designed to put you into the drift.
But Rocky, interesting point, because there has been a huge shift from that. And Napoleon Hill was right. For decades, we've lived in the drift. And I will tell you that thinking about the workplace and the workforce, for the first time in history, we've got 5 generations in the workplace, and they are not going to tolerate the drift. So there is a shift towards desired empowerment. And at the Pacific Institute, we actually teach the necessary elements for an individual to feel in flow and empowered. And that is to be a part of a higher purpose. What's that organizational why? And is my with them, what's in it for me, my role, my responsibilities, is that aligned with the organizational aim? And then lastly, does my effort make a difference? Am I appreciated for the value that the organization is deriving from me? That doesn't mean everybody gets a trophy. It means that, again, am I held in high regard based on my deliverables? So the drift, and that's interesting. I had heard of the book, but no, have not read it. But the guy was a Renaissance man before his time, because the drift isn't tolerated anymore. People want to feel empowered and don't want to just go through life that way.
The people around you, that is, because
there's a certain, let's consider that I'm an optimistic thinker, and considering that is the movement. But yeah, some are just disinterested or fatigued or just burnt out and want to tap out. But I'm going to say, how do you grow through what you go through? Don't tap out. Don't let there be a hitch in the giddy up. Don't consider that there's a terminal end to anything, because we've got a process that can help you replace that picture and move towards abundance versus living with a scarcity mindset.
So true. Before we get to that, though, there's this interim period of your life where you did something interesting. I want to talk a little bit about that.
All right, you're leading the witness, Rocky. Another great question. Well, the reason why my father had a big black Cadillac, Brougham Cadillac, if any of you listeners remember that, I'm dating myself, is because we own funeral homes. My father was a second generation funeral director. My grandfather, his father, founded the Panceira funeral homes in Westerly, Rhode Island back in the 30s. My parents migrated to Southeast Florida, Hollywood, Florida to be exact, and opened the Panceira funeral home here. And I was born and raised in that business. Hardworking people. Depression mindsets, depression babies, but hardworking people, good people. But it was the proverbial American dream. My grandparents came through Ellis Island from Italy, and they were immigrants. But really made it in a way that was wholesome, hardworking, paid off. So funeral service was the interim period in my life. I actually bought the family firm back in 1992, and I was a 24/7 guy as a caregiver, and expanded the family business in a very fulfilling way. Because as a funeral director, you end up being always in service to others. True caregiver at an individual's most difficult time in their life. So do you want me to continue? Because that was the interim. That was the interim. Now I can fast forward to the present. Yes, continue.
How did you get, though, from there to where you are? Like, what was that transition?
There's the bridge. So 15 years ago, it was tax day of 2008, now coming up on 16 years, April 15th, I brought a performance psychologist in Dr. Joe Pace, lovable human being, has just served so many throughout his career. But I brought him into our funeral home to lead our Wings of Hope program, our grief recovery program. And Dr. Joe was he's the chairman of the education initiative with the Pacific Institute, the company that I now lead. And I asked him to help these folks sort of travel the grief journey. So there's not a terminal end. You never you never get over the loss of a loved one. There's always remorse, but we want to help people celebrate a life well lived, celebrate their loved one. Kubler-Ross, 5 stages of grief. 5 stages of grief, 5 stages of grief. That was the teachings then, but there's never real acceptance. It's always just a journey. So I asked Dr. Joe to come in and speak to these folks based on the Pacific Institute's teaching, and that is the replacement picture. So you replace grief with celebration of the memory, and live the legacy of the individual in service to others, loving others, but always holding on to their memory. So Dr. Joe puts the group through what we call a scotoma exercise. The word scotoma means blindness or blind spot in Greek. And it's actually a cognitive blocking out of something that is right in front of you, something that's missing in plain sight. And I'm not going to tell the whole story because I'll give up the I'll give up the punchline. But bottom line is, how many times have those that wear glasses have had your glass on your head and say, where are my glasses? I forgot, I lost my glasses. Well, you walk by a reflection in the mirror, they're right in your head. Or I lost my keys. Well, they're in your pocket, or they're in the ignition, or it's missing in plain sight. So Dr. Joe brought us through the scotoma exercise. Maybe on the next podcast, I'll share it with the audience. It's extraordinary. But bottom line is, I didn't get the right answer. He asked, well, what do you see? Well, man, I didn't see what I was supposed to see. And I thought I had the right answer, and I didn't. And so many in the room had an illuminating moment to really take that deeper step into the awareness zone. Awareness is the first step in recovery, if you will. And I realized then that I was missing much more than just the wrong answer on the scotoma exercise. And so I really burnt the boats, Rocky. I brought my wife in and I asked her to run the funeral homes for me. And I just chased after this mindset education through the Pacific Institute. And fast forward through that one exercise, through that one moment of, aha, what else am I missing? I moved into full-on Pacific Institute mode, and now have the good fortune to be the majority owner of the organization and the CEO of the company.
So you definitely take action and work hard and take over.
That was 15 years, 16 years. Oh my gosh. And it was not easy. I can tell you that. Oh my word. But yeah, I made a long story as short as I could, but that's it. Yeah. That one seminal moment.
So one of the things, because I watched the one talk that you have, and you talked about how many thoughts a day we have, and then kind of how they're classified. So can we touch on that?
Certainly. Yeah. And my talk, my TED talk, actually, it's doing well. Mindset's trending now. I believe at last glance, there were about a 1.3 million views. Crazy. Never thought that. But as I shared, we have 50 to 70,000 thoughts per day. And the problem is that the majority of them, 80 to 90%, are negative. And where does that come from? Well, it's our reptilian brain. It's fight, flight, or freeze. It is the whole notion of as we grew up from through over time through millennia, we were always on high alert. And so we are hardwired. We are programmed. We can change that programming. We are programmed to avoid disaster. We are programmed to run away from or to mitigate risk. That's that whole fight, flight, or freeze, the amygdala hijack. Well, how do we stop or reverse that trend? One is through the awareness that, oh my gosh, we've got 50 to 70,000 opportunities per day to stop that negative spiral. I actually wear a rubber band. It's called the breaking the self-talk cycle, positive self-talk, the pattern interrupt. Very, very simple little mechanism. When I feel myself going into that downward spiral and letting those negative thoughts really embrace me, I just snap myself out of it through a mechanism like this. And you can do it anyway. It's just that awareness to say, wait a second, it is not what we perceive it to be. Fear, false expectations appearing real. And usually what you fear does not occur. Back to you.
That seems like a lot of thoughts to have to overcome.
My friend, yes, and they happen in nanoseconds. It's these synaptic firings just over and over and over again. Most of them subconscious, most of them not in our conscious awareness, and that's what brings us down the habit hole of limiting beliefs that really aren't serving us anymore.
Is it possible to reprogram yourself so 90% are positive?
Yes, I'm not a researcher, so to say that 90% that we can reverse them all, I don't believe that we can reverse them all, so I don't want to give you a number, but can we reprogram? Absolutely. It's called epigenetics. We're born, with certain innate factors, the color of hair, eyes, color of skin, but not our habits, not our beliefs. And we can, through science, cognitive science research, the research says that we can actually change our beliefs at the cellular level. It's called epigenetics. Crazy. Now, it takes time and repetition, but that is how new habits are formed. You got to go back to the belief that drove the initial habit and just reframe the belief. Is it serving you or not? Is it limiting you or liberating you? So can you change at the core of you? Yes, you can.
So one of the things that came up also in that talk was that the brain can't tell what's real. So how does what does that mean and how does that affect us?
Yeah. The brain can't tell the difference between something vividly imagined and the actual experience. I'm going to repeat that one. It's big. The brain cannot tell the difference between something that's vividly imagined and the actual experience. Let me hearken back to the quote from Napoleon Hill. What the mind of man can conceive, can come up with, you can visualize it and believe. You can actually believe it to be true. Okay, you can achieve it. So 100 years ago, 1917, 20 years of research. Now fast forward, you can put your brain under a PET scan, CAT scan, functional MRI, and see these synaptic firings happening, okay, that create neural pathways all based on what you're thinking about. So you got to think about what you're thinking about. And so going back to the difference between affirming or visualizing and the actual experience, well, you can create that vivid imagery. Imagination times vividness with emotion equals reality. That's our formula. You can envision Michael Jordan shooting foul shots, sitting on his seat in the airplane on the way to the game, just over and over again, visualizing, only seeing net, swoosh, swoosh, just vivid imagery, multisensory, smelling the gym, hearing the sneakers on the gym floor, whatever the case may be. But you can envision what success looks like, and yes, manifest that success. I don't want to get too esoteric here, mystical, but you can rewire, recast through neuroplasticity the vivid imagery into the actual experience. Back to you.
That's interesting. So I guess if we're constantly stuck in loops, then those loops are constantly being strengthened. And if we create new loops, then those loops will be strengthened. But you've got to stop the loops you don't want. You have to even notice that they're happening, and then you got to rewrite them.
Right on again, and for good or for bad. So loops, for good or for bad, you want to stop the ones that aren't serving you, and you gotta hack your brain. I mean, you got the brain muscle, right? And through your own thought process, you can overwrite with new software. And so I'm giving, whether it's basketball examples or computer examples, same scenario. You've got you got a computer, HP computer, but it's the Intel inside. You've got the Intel inside. You got that chip. And without question, and there's a 4-step process. It's awareness first. And at times you might not see what you're not seeing. So you use a trusted advisor. You call up Rocky. You hire Rocky as a coach. He helps you with financial literacy or financial appreciation, or don't be afraid of money, or don't be afraid of success. So you create an awareness, but then, okay, acceptance. What do you want different? What is that picture in your mind that you want different? And then you got to act. Lao Tzu, Journey of 1,000 Miles starts with the first step. What are you going to do about it? Rocky's going to hold you accountable to do something about it, for your financial literacy, to your retirement plan, whatever. And then the last step, you got to celebrate success. It's achievement because the brain loves endings and new beginnings, they're dopamine hits going on in our brain. And that creates that creates happiness, if you will. I don't want to get too squishy here. Happiness is good, but it creates that springboard to going from a successful outcome to the next successful outcome. It provides energy for you to continue towards new goal setting.
You talked about a 4-step process. So
yeah,
what are specifically those 4 steps?
Surely. We actually, and I just hot off the press, I got some edits here still in the work in process, but we've got a worksheet called Mindset Reset. And the 4 steps are awareness. Okay. Oh my gosh, I didn't see this before. I'm aware of it now. Acceptance, I want to change it. Okay. But then envision the new level of success. What do you want to accept as the replacement picture? Next step is action. And we use the simple SMART model: specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, time-bound action plan. Okay. So it's actions and then achievement, celebration. You always got to celebrate the successes. And even if you miss the mark a bit, you got to be a heat-seeking missile, just mid-course correction. But even in the simplest of form, I'm sure some of your listeners have heard of that great commencement speech by Admiral McCraven at University of Texas, 2016, make your bed every day. You can change the world by making your bed every day. He says very clearly, just by doing that one action and doing it well, you can start the day with an accomplishment. You got to celebrate the small things. It's called, it's goal setting theory. It's proximal goal setting achievement. And that's what gets you to the distal goals. It gets you offshore and starts having you create a horizon beyond the horizon for your goal setting. But it's the little things that matter. So the last step is achievement.
Today's episode is sponsored by Profit Answer Man Podcast. Did you know that most small business owners hate looking at their financials? It's one reason they may struggle with business success. The Profit Answer Man podcast helps them ensure they are profitable and can pay their employees and weather the storms we all have to face. It's built on the Profit First methodology of pay yourself first. The Profit Answer Man podcast is a must listen to for every small business owner and anyone who wants to help them survive and thrive. Check it out on your favorite listening platform.
You know, they've adapted that in the money space where if you're in a bunch of debt, they tell you pay off the smallest debt first. Yeah. Because you have the win. And once you have the win, you have the momentum, and then you continue to keep paying off the smallest debts, and it literally powers you forward from there.
My friend, that is goal setting theory. You just nailed it. Yes, another great example. But for your audience, so the 4 steps are awareness, acceptance, action, achievement. Awareness, acceptance, action, achievement.
The 4 A's.
There you go.
Part of what you also talked in that video was about activating the RAS system to be your search engine. And I think if you're not aware, you start telling your brain to search for stuff that you don't really want. So in other words, if you're searching for it to be a bad day, it's going to be a bad day.
Big time. Big time. So why does that happen? We're teleological. We move towards what we think about. And the RAS system, reticular activating system, it's actually a net-like group of cells at the base of our brain, but it acts as our radar, as our GPS, subconsciously searching out solutions. And we've got to set our RAS on solutions that will serve us. Because as you said, if I'm just always in this, oh my gosh, woe is me, you're gonna search out that moribund, woe is me, dark days, oh my God, more clouds, same clouds as yesterday, versus no, snap yourself out of it. What do I want it to look like fixed? what can I embrace here and use as a stepping stone to get to the next level of achievement, the next level of success. But yeah, you've got to, and that is that vivid imagery again, because you've got to, even though you don't possess it today, you must hack your mind to say, all right, this is what success looks like as it relates to achieving this goal. The celebration, how I'm going to feel, and it may be, what's going to be the motivating factor because I'm going to get bonused or commissioned or whatever the case may be, or I'm going to be happier. But it's that envisioning that sets your reticular activating system on course subconsciously to look for solutions along the way, to cull through things 24/7 to serve you up solutions for you to use them consciously. And at times it's like you don't even know, oh my gosh, that was just happenstance, or that was serendipity, or oh my God, that was manna from heaven. And a great example of that is when you're shopping for a new refrigerator and you open up I guess people don't read papers anymore, but they online papers, right? And all of a sudden you got the insert and it's just it's all kinds of layouts for refrigerators on sale. And you say to yourself, my God, I'm looking for, and they got them all on sale today. Man, those things have been there. Every day you open the paper, they've been there. What are you talking about? They were just not important to you at the time. So when you put importance on finding solutions, interesting how things become happenstance.
It is. I think in the past, going back, people looked at that as kind of woo-woo.
Yeah.
And I think now science is saying, wait a minute, this actually works. There's science behind it. It's no longer this crazy idea.
My friend, remember my father, the story I told you earlier, hardcore cat, man, hardcore. And it was a wad of hundreds that he pulled out. Man, this is it. It's all about this. And I was not raised with woo-woo. I was not raised with woo-woo. So there is no way in heck that I'm a woo-woo cat today. And I tease and say, cash isn't the most important thing, but it's right up there with oxygen. I mean, God almighty, how do you buy the groceries, right? But I will tell you that it's because of the science-backed information that we have culled over time at the Pacific Institute that I'm a believer. Because science supports the very essence of all that I'm sharing. And that's when I opened my presentations 100 years ago, Napoleon Hill, what the mind of man can conceive and believe it can achieve. Fast forward, you can scan your brain, you can see the synaptic firings, you can see the new neural pathways, and that's how new habits are formed. I'm not a woo-woo cat, man. Trust me. Man, I will discount that. I need to make sure we got process. Matter of fact, we had the good fortune to be covered in this book because we worked with University of Alabama and Nick Saban. He's a process guy, and I wasn't planning on sharing this with you, but there ain't no woo-woo in Nick Saban. And here's one of the little excerpts. After Roller Coaster 2007 season that ended with a 7-6 record, Saban hired the Pacific Institute, a Seattle-based company focused on how the mind works and how to actually hack your mind, according to CEO Mark Panceira. Just one last excerpt. One tactic the Pacific Institute used that could be applied to any organization was gathering employees and breaking them into small groups. The facilitators would ask them to identify what each employee believed was the biggest limiting belief occurring within the organization. Ultimately, the goal was to use that limiting belief in turn and turn it into a positive organizational affirmation that everybody was expected to buy into. Trust me, Nick Saban is not woo-woo. Back to you.
So I used to coach soccer back in the day, kids.
Okay.
And when I took over the team, they were classic 1 in 10 all the time.
Yeah.
And the first thing I had to teach them, and what I did was I handed out a survey. One of the questions I asked was, how many games are we going to win?
Nice.
Because I basically said, look, until you believe that you can win all of these games, we're not going to win them.
Yeah.
And
love it.
I knew the talent of the team. I just knew they didn't believe they could win. And so we had to change the belief that we could win. And then things started. We practiced what does that take to do that. But until they believed, it didn't happen. And literally I had to wait till one of the age groups left because it almost seemed like it was impossible to get them to believe.
Yeah, and it's too bad, but sometimes if you can't change the people, change the people. But I'm not a full on believer in that because I do believe that you can. The job of a leader is to illuminate the potential in others and solicit it. But at times it might just be one naysayer, or it might be, well, we're talking about culture now, but whether it's one naysayer or the whole group, you got to get to the root beliefs, because if they all believe that we're a 1 in 10 team, you're right, it will manifest. It is what you're going to, they're going to play to it. They're going to play to it. So good job, Rocky. And yes, sometimes it's got to be evolutionary like that, as you said, one age group, but beliefs, we define a mindset in based on 4 elements, and that's habits, attitudes, beliefs, and expectations. And our little acronym is HABES, and that's what holds performance back. You got all this potential, but our potential goes through a HAB filter, HABES, HABE filter, habits, attitudes, beliefs, and expectations. And those are typically formed when we're children, like me, 8 years old. This is it, man. This is power right here, right? You can change those HABES, you can recast them and open up the use of your potential to drive greater performance. All that said, the most important element in the HABES, habits, attitudes, beliefs, and expectations, are beliefs. If you focus only on beliefs, because that is what drives the rest of those elements, then you're going to be able to recast habits, because you'll have a data point. Oh, we believe we're a 500 team. Okay, 5-5. Do that this season. What do we got to do? More wind sprints, more ball handling. Better skills. But it's a mindset, changing the beliefs first, that then are going to change the data points that link to new habits and behavior.
I think it's hilarious how not only do you remember it, but you've got the accent down too.
My friend, Dad, thank you for helping me this podcast. Oh, hardcore. Yeah. God bless him, man. And he was abundantly successful, funeral director, community leader. But that was his mindset because of his beliefs based on he was born in, when his parents were in the Depression, right? He was born in 28. And that was in the midst of all that. And not easy times. And those are foundational. Again, had a great upbringing, but man, that's not how I raised my children. How about that one? I raised them on the Pacific Institute, by the way, and now they are abundantly successful. I got a surgeon, I got a CPA, and I got my son who's working at the Pacific Institute in marketing, but they are all about mindset. And it's interesting that they have taught me what I taught them years ago when they were dogging me, saying, I've heard enough, Dad, I've heard enough. But now they teach me in return.
It's funny because every time I read a psychology book, I realize it's a parenting book, and all psychologists do is fix the problems that the parents created. And I don't think parents realize how much damage they do in the programming that occurs, not by what you say necessarily, but by your behaviors and your actions, because that's what kids are internalizing.
You're right.
And so it's great that you were able to break that pattern. Do you have siblings?
Yes, I do. 2 sisters.
Have they changed along the way like you have, or are they stuck in the patterns they were given?
If I say no comment, I think you'll have the answer. But Rocky, I go back to that seminal moment on April 15th, 2008. And I thought I was the Mac Daddy. I thought, I had all the bling. My name was on the building. I thought I had I was on the wrong side of ego. So I had that one wake up moment, and it impacted me, saying, it's time. You need to really fulfill the promise you made to yourself, and that is Army slogan, be all that you can be. Because a mentor told me once that how his father raised him, and now, God rest his soul, Dr. Abe Fischler, he was an extraordinary leader. He said that his father taught him to leave the world a bit better than he found it. And I embraced that, and I wasn't doing it then. I was on the wrong side of ego. And when you hit your head, when you see the blood on your forehead for long enough and you don't realize why, well, when you have that awareness moment, you say, man, it's because I'm hitting against the wall. There's more in life. Stop hitting against the wall. So anyway, there's my answer. It's real. You got to own your own destiny. Nobody can change your own mindset. It's got to be a want to on your end. And I had that moment to say, man, I want to leave the world and others better than I found them.
And that's basically about creating and taking agency, taking control of your situation. And I think a lot of people are so stuck that they don't even realize that they have the power of agency, but they don't use it, or they don't even know where to begin.
Again, well done, well said. And human agency is critical when it comes to, well, even going back to the Napoleon Hill quote, or the belief that we can change. There's a concept called efficacy that was researched and proven by Dr. Albert Bandura, God rest his soul, a professor at Stanford University, and he was one of our academic advisors. But you need the efficacy, which is the causative power that you can actually change, because if you don't have that agency, that human agency, the efficacy, then you will fail. If you don't believe that you have the ability, very much like a drug. If I don't believe when I have a headache and I take 2 Advil, 2 Tylenol, whatever, if I don't believe, if those drugs don't have the efficacy to get my brain better, then I got to be careful, because it's not about me believing those drugs are going to do it. I want to tie to the efficacy of a drug, and that is the developers of those drugs have given us the statistical validity that those drugs have efficacy. Okay, makes sense that they're going to fix your brain, or they're going to fix your headache. And so it's efficacy of a drug. I'm talking about efficacy of your own beliefs, that you have the causative power to set a goal and achieve it, to change your beliefs and move towards a replacement picture. Back to you, your thinking, your processing.
If you look at the studies for a lot of the psychiatric medicines,
yeah,
the placebo rate is incredible.
Yeah, you got to believe if you believe it. Yeah.
And you have to truly understand statistics to understand the differentials. So I may have a drug that has a 20% improvement in a symptom, but that 20% improvement might be a very small number when you look at it in relative terms.
Yes, sir.
It could be from 5% to 6%. And that's a 20% improvement. But at the end of the day, nobody really noticed anything different.
My friend, you're right. And thanks for the refinement, especially going through COVID. You heard the word efficacy quite a bit. The efficacy of this drug as a deterrent to getting COVID, whether you believe it or not. But you heard that word. So I just wanted to reference it as it relates to drugs. But efficacy is a cognitive concept that's been researched, and you must believe that you've got that causative power. And that's where human agency comes in. Because if you don't believe, go back to Dr. Man's Search for Meaning. Dr. Help me, please, in the concentration camp. Somebody's going to, I know everybody's yelling at it, all your listeners now. We're gonna come up with it, but cool. Man's Search for Meaning. We're gonna get there before we say goodbye. But they had the efficacy, or the Stockdale paradox. You can never give up hope. You got to deal with your current reality, your stark reality. But You got to have hopefulness that things are going to be brighter, that things are going to turn.
Viktor Frankl.
Viktor Frankl, Dr. Frankl. Oh my gosh, forgive me. He's a hero of mine, Dr. Viktor Frankl.
And that was all mindset.
Touche.
Right? How he looked at it. So we've had a lot of guests on who have actually had radical changes in their life. And I will say, it's funny because in the beginning, this show's been coming up on 8 years. In the beginning, most of those people were experiencing life and death situations, like a car accident, something, and it dramatically shifted the way they looked at the world. Lately, everyone seems to be taking psychedelics, and that's what they're doing. I don't know if you've had any exposure to that or seen anything with regards to that, and is there any validity to that as well?
Sure. Well, certainly I'm not an expert in that category, and no, I have not experienced the use of any of, psilocybin or ayahuasca or drugs of that nature. But I'm reading a lot about them now. I'm reading a lot. I'm hearing a lot about microdosing. I'm hearing about ketamine centers. Interestingly, and Dr. Timothy Leary, Harvard professor, right? He was just chastised back, I think, in the 70s for the LSD consideration that it might have positive effects. What I don't want to do is opine as someone who knows, because I don't. What I know, though, is that from my understanding, the intention of those pharmaceuticals is to get oneself into the subconscious level of thoughts in order to recast, in order to do this hacking of the mind. I will tell you that we do that at the Pacific Institute without interventions, chemical interventions. And it's not mystical. This is proven science. And we've worked with the Navy SEALs and, again, University of Alabama. We're a 52-year-old company. I mean, extraordinary. But what's interesting is that a lot of folks are opining about the benefit of those accelerants, if you will, because it allows one, and note, there are at certain levels, there are those kinds of interventions or medical interventions that are necessary. We are not that. We are a personal development, professional development organization. But Rocky, a lot of information in the press about those types of things. And my understanding is that it's an accelerant to get to that subconscious level where with and we've got curriculum with large bibliographies proving the value. Here's our leadership program, Leadership Mindset, that give people the tools to create human agency based on their own desires in personal and professional development.
And one of the ways they kind of changed the paradigm on that was the research that was done in PTSD and how helpful it was.
Yeah.
And so that kind of opened the door that all of a sudden the government couldn't argue against their own soldiers because they were noticing dramatic efficacy in making that kind of change there.
And you're reading about cannabis as well. Same scenario for certain ailments. So I'm a growth mindset oriented individual. Doesn't mean that I partake, but I am not judgmental at all. I'm all about, I'm all about leaving others better than I might have found them. What can I do to do that as a caregiver? Coming from my funeral service roots, now instead of burying the dead, if you will, I want to breathe life into the living, breathe life into leaders around the globe.
One of the big things that we talk about is having clarity on purpose, creating a life plan, and creating a vision for your future. And I'm in the midst of rewriting mine now. And I went through your course and I was kind of mildly surprised. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. This is essentially writing a life plan, looking at all areas of your life, defining what you want, defining where you're at, and figuring out how to get through
Big time, man.
Through those steps. That was not what I was expecting.
What were you expecting?
I don't think I looked at it in that wide a scope. I thought it would be more just focused on just the mindset, not on actually looking at it and applying it to every single area of life.
Yeah, good insight. And you just helped me. The program that Rocky's talking about is Invent Your Future. It is our online curriculum, and it's got the core elements, the core algorithm for mindset change. And Rocky, you're right. It provides what the program you went through provides resiliency, provides persistence, provides a life plan because we have embedded the growth wheel, so you could use it for life affirmation, whether it's prosperity or family connection or health and wellness or nutrition, whatever. But it can also be overlaid professionally too, because it's the same concepts. It's the same algorithm, if you will, and that is awareness. What might you be missing, and acceptance. What do you want to change, and then setting that vision, setting that. When I say that clear picture for that clear picture. This is your current reality. You need to create a clear picture of your ideal. What does ideal look like? What does visionary look like? Because therein lies the gap. So you did your own little gap analysis, and we create what's called cognitive dissonance. We want to create that dissonance between your current reality and your vision where you want to be, because it's that energy. It's called euphoric stress, that creates the propulsion to get you to where you want to be. So the steps are in that program. It's robust. Again, my Invent Your Future, but that has the core elements that we expand upon for leadership programs or for organizational cultural alignment. Because what leaders are looking for is to get everybody rowing in the same direction. So everybody goes through those programs in a company based on the vision that's set by the leader. Where are we going? And because we got to know where we're going, because then we'll understand when we get there. All right, hurrah. But that goes back to the empowerment. Create that vision, the higher purpose why, that North Star. What's in it for me? What's that connection between my role and responsibility to get us there? And then lastly, that my effort makes a difference. What I'm putting forth is actually advancing the cause.
They all overlap and kind of go together. Absolutely. in all of those. It's funny because when we onboard a new client to work with their business, we actually send them a wheel.
Oh, do you?
And we look at all the different parts of their life, because we realize if they have a flat tire, right, one part of the wheel is not well, it's going to affect them as the leader of that business.
Right.
And until we fix the flat tire, nothing else matters. And we use the analogy of a sports car. You can have a Ferrari, but if the tire is flat, it doesn't matter. You're not going anywhere.
Yeah, man.
And I think a lot of people, that's where that whole concept of getting away from the word balance, because everyone thought balance meant everything was equal. When we talk about harmony, like, you create it for you in your way, your song, your vision.
I'm glad you said that, because especially now that people talk about work-life balance, or is it life-work balance, but is there really balance? It's more boundaries and setting your sights on what's important to you. I'm glad you mentioned that, because yes, it's a wheel, but it's that graph circumplex that you decide what's important to you, slices of your life pie, and then grade them. How am I doing? Where do I want to be? What do I got to do to close that gap?
And how it comes together. Is there anything we should have talked about we didn't get a chance to?
We covered a lot. When you hit me with that, how'd you learn about money? It's like, whoa, that was interesting. But no, this has been loads of fun. Thank you.
I am glad to hear that.
It's time to learn the secrets of life.
What's your secret to living an abundant life?
My mantra is I want to leave others and leave the world better than I found them. That is my secret, because it brings me back to center. Am I showing up as the best as my best self. That is my secret. Yes.
And I believe in the same thing. When I go and I do things, I'm like, I want to leave the place better than I found it.
Yeah. Yeah.
What did you learn later in life that you wish you would have learned sooner?
I'm going to say that scotoma moment made me realize that I was living in a blind spot. I felt as if I always had the right answer. I didn't realize that I was locking on solutions that I thought were the right answers and locking out other opportunity. So that scotoma moment at 15 odd years ago, right? I'm 61 now. So what's that, 46, 15 years ago? Still somewhat of a young man with a lot of runway. But I had 46 wasted years thinking that I had all the answers, Rocky. What a ding dong, man. What a ding dong I was.
At least you learned, right?
Awareness, first step in recovery, my brother.
If you were to give an 18-year-old one specific piece of wisdom, what would it be?
Yeah. The sun rises every morning. That is the promise of the universe. So don't despair. Tomorrow is right around the corner. And I know that sounds somewhat cliche, but it is embracing growing through what you're going through. And there's always a reset. Every day brings us a reset. The sun will always rise tomorrow. And no matter if there's clouds there or not, the sun is there. So embrace abundance, celebrate the smallest of things, and don't get mired in scarcity and the woe is me, despair, downward spiral of life.
Life is abundant. You have your choices, as we've talked about. You get to pick, if you're going to listen to the negatives or rewrite your scripts and make them positive and decide what matters most for you. If people would like to learn more about you, the Pacific Institute, where can they find all of this information?
Surely. We have a great website, The Pacific, like the ocean, Institute. I have my own little website, markpanceira.com. I've become the brand evangelist. I do a lot of speaking to groups, to leaders, to associations. And it's this type of messaging, but it can fit in a sales environment. It can fit in a hospital environment, in a healthcare. It can fit in a manufacturing. It can fit because the use of mindset is ubiquitous. So thepacificinstitute.com, markpanceira.com, my cell 954-684-1650. Reach out to me. My email address, M for Mark, Panceira, P Peter, ANCIERA at thepacificinstitute.com. I am here to serve.
Thank you so much for sharing, and hopefully your phone won't ring off the hook.
I'm all about open door type of management, and I just exhibited that to all of your listeners.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Rocky. It truly was loads of fun. I appreciate you.
I took the course that Mark created with the Pacific Institute, and I got to tell you, I loved it. I'm in the midst of rewriting my life plan before this even happened because I already achieved everything on the previous one. And so this is really helping me think through some new dimensions and also how to add and improve the way that I go about it. So my question for you are, what are your biggest takeaways about how you behave and maybe some of the patterns you are stuck following? It's all about letting go. That's what I'm going through that journey myself. By the way, who do you know who would benefit from listening to this episode of Richer Soul? I'd appreciate it if you would share it with them. Big thank you for doing that in advance. Next week, we've got Bo Bennett on, and he's going to talk about how we become better humans by understanding our thinking processes and biases. Thanks for listening. Have an abundant week.